Have you ever had like one of those moments that just completely jams the gears of how you think the world works?
Oh, absolutely, all the time.
Because, I mean, we usually go through our days viewing life as this perfectly logical cause and effect series of events. It feels like a massive, predictable clockwork mechanism, right?
Right, you turn a specific gear, and the hands move in a very specific way.
Exactly. You go to
Mhm.
school, you get a job, you pay your rent, you buy groceries. It's this very uh, Newtonian mechanical way of looking at the universe.
Which is comfortable. I mean, it provides a profound sense of psychological safety. We crave that structure because it gives us the illusion of total control.
Yeah, that illusion that if you just follow the blueprint, your life will fall into place exactly as you planned it.
Right, but then out of nowhere, the machinery glitches.
It totally glitches.
Yeah.
You know exactly the kind of moment I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like you're walking down the street, agonizing over a major decision, maybe debating whether to quit your job and move across the
And
country.
you're just totally lost in your own head.
Right. And then you walk into a coffee shop, sit down, and you just happen to overhear two complete strangers having a conversation that perfectly answers your exact dilemma.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Or you're randomly thinking about a childhood friend you haven't spoken to in like 15 years.
Yes. And 10 seconds later, your phone buzzes, and it's a text from them.
It's so surreal.
Suddenly, that rigid, clockwork universe feels a lot less like a cold machine and more like this dynamic, interactive web that is somehow listening to you.
Well, and those experiences of synchronicity are incredibly jarring. They force a crack in our conventional worldview.
They really do.
When you experience a true coincidence that carries that level of specific meaning, you kind of have to add if there is a hidden architecture to your life. I mean, it makes you wonder if there is an entirely different layer of reality that we're completely ignoring.
Well, welcome to the Book Nook. If you are sitting there nodding, if you've ever felt that strange pull of coincidence, you're going to love our deep dive today.
It's going to be a fun one.
We love a good paradigm shift here, and today we are unpacking a book that practically defined the concept of synchronicity for an entire generation. We are diving into James Redfield's massive cultural phenomenon, the Celestine Prophecy.
Which, just the history of this book alone is a fascinating case study. I mean, it was published in the early 90s, and it completely bypassed the traditional gatekeepers of the publishing industry.
Right, there was no massive corporate marketing campaign initially, was there?
None at all. It spread almost entirely by word of mouth.
People were literally buying out independent bookstores, taking these dog-eared copies and handing them to their friends or coworkers, saying, I can't explain it, but you just have to read this.
It felt like a secret that everyone suddenly needed to know. I mean, it went on to sell over 10 million copies worldwide.
It's incredible. But the most interesting part is the format. It's not some dry academic nonfiction treatise.
Far from it. It's structured as an adventure parable. The narrative is set in the dense jungles and high mountains of Peru.
Very Indiana Jones.
Exactly. It follows this protagonist who gets caught up in a genuinely dangerous search for a missing ancient manuscript.
And this manuscript supposedly contains 9 vital spiritual truths, which the book just calls the insights. So our mission for this deep dive is to strip away the jungle foliage, so to speak, and extract that core philosophy.
We're going to map out the step-by-step guide this manuscript offers.
Right, a guide for understanding human history, the hidden physics of energy, our psychological traumas, and ultimately what the book claims is our evolutionary destiny.
And what makes this material so compelling is its versatility. I mean, whether you approach this as a dedicated spiritual seeker or as a strict, grounded psychological pragmatist, the framework actually holds up.
It really does. It provides an incredibly sharp lens for understanding why we experience coincidences, why human beings constantly argue, and how we might actually be on the edge of a massive cultural shift.
And so let's jump right into the narrative. The story begins with our unnamed protagonist feeling, well, exactly how a lot of us feel. He's completely disillusioned.
He's restless. The things that used to bring him satisfaction just aren't working anymore.
Right. And out of the blue, he reconnects with an old friend, Charlene, who has just returned from Peru. She tells him about this secret manuscript that the Peruvian government is actively trying to suppress.
And as they are talking, he experiences this sudden, undeniable rush of mysterious coincidences. And based on almost nothing but a gut feeling, he packs a bag and jumps on a flight to Lima.
which is wild. But that impulsive decision introduces us directly to the first insight.
Okay, let's break that down.
So the first insight is essentially the observation that a critical mass of individuals on this planet is experiencing exactly what the protagonist is experiencing. They are waking up to these synchronistic events.
Like a collective realization.
Yes. We are starting to collectively realize that these moments, like the overheard conversation in the coffee shop, aren't just blind mathematical probability.
Right, they aren't just random.
Exactly. They operate as signs leading us toward a specific destiny. So the first insight is just that initial disorienting moment of waking up and realizing there is a profound spiritual process happening right beneath the surface.
It's that jarring feeling of, wait, there's infinitely more going on here than just paying my mortgage and waiting for the weekend.
But of course, human nature kicks in almost immediately.
Oh, yeah. As soon as he gets on the plane, the adrenaline wears off and the self-doubt creeps in. He's thinking, I have lost my mind. I am flying to a foreign country, chasing a rumor.
And it is in that exact moment of intense doubt that the universe delivers the next puzzle piece. He gets up to go to the restroom, and he happens to overhear another passenger talking about the manuscript.
Which is such a beautifully constructed moment of synchronicity in the story. He introduces himself, and this passenger turns out to be Wayne Dobson, an assistant professor of history from NYU.
Right. And Dobson isn't a random tourist. He's heading to Peru specifically because he has already studied the first two insights. And Dobson is the one who unveils the second insight to our protagonist.
And I have to say, from a purely intellectual standpoint, the second insight is one of the most fascinating parts of the entire book.
I completely agree. Dobson provides the historical anchor. He answers the massive question of why this awakening is happening right now.
Why are millions of people feeling this at this specific point in human history?
Exactly. Dobson introduces a concept he calls the longer now. The premise is that to truly understand our current spiritual state, we can't just look at the last 10 or 20 years.
Right, you have to zoom way out.
We have to look at history as a grand evolution of human consciousness. Dobson argues we have to intellectually relive the last 1,000 years to see how we ended up so spiritually lost.
So he takes him on this mental time travel journey. He breaks the last millennium down into 3 major phases. Let's start with the first phase. Imagine you're alive in the year 1000, right in the thick of the Middle Ages. Your entire conception of reality is defined exclusively by the churchmen.
Right. In that medieval worldview, the defining characteristic was absolute spiritual certainty, coupled with practically zero scientific understanding.
Zero.
Every single phenomenon you experienced was defined strictly in supernatural terms.
So if there was a massive thunderstorm that destroyed your crops, or a sudden earthquake, or, God forbid, your child fell ill with a fever, you didn't think about barometric pressure or viruses.
Those concepts simply didn't exist for you. Everything was either the direct will of God rewarding or punishing you, or it was the malice of the devil.
You lived your entire life facing this binary spiritual test to win salvation. And the church officials were the sole arbitrators of your progress. They held the keys to reality.
And there's a strange comfort in that, isn't there?
There really is. You know exactly where you stand. The universe is terrifying, but you have a clear rule book.
But that comfort doesn't last. We move into the 14th and 15th centuries, hitting the second phase, which is the Renaissance and the scientific revolution.
Right. Dobson talks about how figures like Martin Luther began rebelling against the corruption of those very churchmen.
And simultaneously, astronomers start looking through early telescopes and mathematically proving that the Earth is not, in fact, the center of the universe.
Which is huge.
The psychological impact of those two events happening at the same time cannot be overstated. It was a catastrophic blow to the medieval mind.
Humanity suddenly loses its privileged place in the cosmos. We're no longer the focal point of creation. We're just on a rock spinning in a void.
The clear consensus about the nature of the universe completely collapses.
The rule book is torn up.
And that causes a massive collective loss of spiritual certainty. Humans are thrown into a terrifying existential crisis. We realize the people telling us how the universe worked were completely wrong.
So humanity essentially panics. We look out at this vast, dangerous universe and we say, okay, the old way is dead. We need a brand new way to figure out what is real. And that crisis births the modern preoccupation.
Exactly. To solve the crisis of not knowing, we created a new tool, which is the scientific method. We essentially deputized a group of explorers and scientists, and we gave them a historical mission.
We told them, go out, figure out how it works, and come back and tell us the meaning of life.
Find out the true nature of God and our ultimate purpose.
Yes. And this is where I want to introduce a video game analogy because I think it perfectly captures the comedy of the last 400 years.
Oh, I love this analogy.
It's like humanity booted up a massive RPG. Our main quest was clear, find the meaning of life. But here's the problem. The universe was infinitely more complex than we anticipated. The scientists couldn't just come back right away with the answers.
And humanity, waiting back at home, couldn't just sit in a state of existential dread forever. We needed a psychological coping mechanism. We needed something to distract us while we waited.
So we looked around and decided, well, while we wait, why don't we try to make our physical existence a bit more comfortable?
Yeah.
Let's conquer nature, build better shelters, and create material security.
And this is where the analogy hits home. The main quest was too difficult, so we started doing the side quests.
We started mining for resources, inventing steam engines, building better armor. We set up global trade routes. And we spent 400 years doing nothing but side quests.
We got so profoundly preoccupied with leveling up our technology that we completely repressed the original spiritual question. The side quest became our entire reality.
We forgot what the main quest even was.
That perfectly encapsulates Dobson's point. We became fundamentally obsessed with economic progress as a substitute for spiritual security. Working to survive just grew to feel like a complete reason to live.
Now, I have to pause and push back on this, though, because it can sound a bit dismissive to modern ears.
Sure.
Is the book actually suggesting that our entire technological boom, like electricity, modern medicine, airplanes, is just a giant psychological coping mechanism? It sounds like it's condemning progress as a mistake.
That is a very common reaction, but Dobson is careful to clarify this. The manuscript does not view the modern preoccupation as a mistake. In fact, it frames it as a completely necessary evolutionary stage.
So we had to do the side quests.
We absolutely needed to establish material security. You cannot focus on your higher spiritual evolution if you are terrified of starving to death or dying of a minor infection.
Fair point.
We needed to invent antibiotics. The issue isn't the progress itself. The issue is that the obsession has finally run its course.
The distraction is wearing off.
Precisely. We have spent 4 centuries conquering the Earth. But in our blind drive to manipulate resources, we have pushed the planet's ecosystems to the absolute brink of collapse.
The 400-year side quest is completing itself out of necessity?
Right. We have built the ultimate technological society, yet we're looking around feeling incredibly empty. The existential dread is returning, and that is what is forcing us to wake up and ask, wait, what are we surviving for?
That makes perfect sense. The coincidences, those moments of synchronicity, are essentially the alarm clock.
Exactly.
They are the universe gently shaking us awake. And if we are waking up to ask what the universe is really about, the ancient manuscript doesn't just offer philosophy. It offers an immediate physical answer.
Which brings us to the next profound shift in the book. The protagonist arrives in Peru, and almost immediately, things go sideways.
Yeah, he survives a terrifying shootout in Lima. We won't get bogged down in the action movie details, but this establishes a crucial reality. Powerful factions, specifically the government and certain church officials, are violently trying to suppress this manuscript.
It threatens their power.
So he escapes with a guy named Will, and they journey into the mountains, eventually arriving at the Vicente Lodge.
And Vicente is a pivotal location. It's this breathtaking estate surrounded by old-growth forests. It operates outside traditional academia, serving as a secret hub for scientists studying phenomena that totally upend the mechanistic worldview.
This lodge is where he learns the third insight. And the third insight fundamentally rewrites reality. It states that the universe is not made of dead mechanistic matter. It's not a collection of inert billiard balls.
Right. Instead, the universe is a vast, interconnected field of pure energy. And the most shocking part is that this universal energy is inherently malleable to human intention.
Yes. The book introduces a concept bridging spirituality and quantum physics. A physics professor there, Sarah, explains that modern quantum mechanics already points to this. At the subatomic level, things act like probability waves, like pure energy.
And crucially, the act of observation alters the results. The basic stuff of the universe responds to what the human observer expects to see.
But the book takes it out of the laboratory and puts it into our daily lives. How do we actually interact with this energy? The text offers a fascinating tool, which is the beauty barometer.
The beauty barometer. It claims our ability to perceive this invisible energy field begins with a heightened sensitivity to beauty.
Right. It's a very specific shift in perception. When things in your environment start to seem unusually vibrant or a tree looks luminous, you aren't just appreciating aesthetics.
That heightened perception means your vibration is rising. You are getting incredibly close to actually seeing the energy fields that surround living things.
And Sarah isn't just philosophizing at the lodge. She is actively running empirical experiments on the plants in the gardens. They aren't just adjusting soil pH, they are giving the plants direct human attention.
Projecting focused, positive energy toward specific plants. And the results are a cornerstone of the book's philosophy. The plants that receive human attention don't just grow taller, they're fundamental biological makeup changes.
They become nutritionally more potent.
Yes. They develop higher levels of protein, more complex vitamins, denser minerals.
The implication of that is staggering. If human expectation and focused attention can literally alter the physical nutritional makeup of a plant, it means our thoughts are not contained in our skulls.
Right. Our intentions are tangible forces flowing out into the physical world.
But every revelation brings a shadow, right?
Oh, always.
If energy can be exchanged, if we can project it and absorb it, what happens when this dynamic plays out between two human beings?
And that dark reality is the core of the fourth insight. It is called the struggle for power.
This is where it transitions from mystical physics to raw psychological pragmatism. He meets a psychologist named Renaud who uses the energy framework to explain the root of all human conflict.
Renaud explains a tragic reality. Humanity is, for the most part, entirely disconnected from the universe's infinite source of energy.
Because we spent 400 years focused entirely on the material world. We essentially unplugged ourselves from the socket to play with our physical toys.
Exactly. We are cut off. And because we are spiritually disconnected, we inherently walk around feeling weak, insecure, and lacking in vital energy.
We feel this existential emptiness.
So, to compensate for this deficit, human beings subconsciously seek to steal energy from the only other source they know, which is other human beings.
And this part of the book is a gut punch. I mean, it hits so uncomfortably close to home. The manuscript explains that whenever we try to dominate a conversation or stubbornly force our viewpoint on someone, we aren't just debating ideas.
We are literally sucking their vital force into ourselves. It operates as a deeply unconscious psychological mechanism. When you make another person defer to you, it makes you feel powerful. You get a psychological high.
But if you look at the other person, they are left feeling depleted and physically drained.
Yes, invalidated and confused.
So if we look at human history through this lens, we are essentially operating as a species of psychological vampires.
That's a great way to put it.
We are constantly feeding off one another. Every petty argument with your spouse, every passive-aggressive dispute at work, even global wars. We are all walking around with empty cups trying to forcefully drink from everyone else's cup.
And we mask this behavior under so many layers of rationalization. We never admit we are seeking dominance for an energetic high. We tell ourselves we are doing it for their own good, or we justify it because we are the boss.
Right. I have to enforce standards.
But the hidden dynamic is almost always a parasitic theft of energy.
Now, I have to play devil's advocate here. I had a hard time with this initially. Aren't some conflicts about actual objective right and wrong? What about fighting systemic injustice? Is the book really claiming that every single argument is just petty energy theft?
It's a vital question. Will, the guide, actually addresses this directly with the protagonist. He acknowledges that objective reality exists, some causes are genuinely just, and battles must be fought to protect the innocent.
Okay.
However, he points out a crucial nuance. The reason most conflicts cannot be easily resolved, the reason they drag on and turn endlessly toxic, is always because at least one side is holding on tightly for the energetic boost of being right.
Oh, I see.
The objective issue becomes secondary to the ego's desperate need to dominate and siphon energy from the loser.
Wow. If you really let that sink in, it completely reframes how you look at every argument. Next time you're in a debate going in circles, you have to ask, am I still trying to solve the problem? Or am I just feeding on the feeling of being superior?
It's a humbling question.
It really is. But this leaves us with a massive problem. If our entire social structure is built on this toxic competition for limited human energy, how on earth do we break the cycle? How do we recharge without stealing from each other?
And that puzzle is exactly what the next stage tries to solve. The protagonist encounters Father Sanchez, a priest who represents a hidden progressive faction within the church. And Sanchez introduces him to the fifth insight, the message of the mystics.
Right. And the fifth insight provides the antidote to the psychological vampirism. It explains the step-by-step mechanics of how to tap directly into the universe's infinite energy.
It demystifies the mystical experience. It frames it as an attainable state anyone can achieve, not just something for saints on mountaintops.
Father Sanchez actually walks him through it practically. And it starts with something incredibly mundane, which is eating. Sanchez demonstrates by taking a meal and meticulously over-chewing his food.
He focuses all his attention on fully absorbing the taste, the textures, the aroma. He isn't just mindlessly swallowing calories. He is consciously absorbing the energy of the food.
It's profound mindfulness with an energetic goal. From there, Sanchez escalates it to the environment. He has the protagonist sit quietly and focus his attention on the beauty of a specific tree. This ties right back to the beauty barometer.
Exactly. As he focuses on the unique shape of the branches and the specific shade of green and allows himself to truly appreciate its perfection, something shifts. He feels a physical rush of energy fill his body.
And the text makes a critical distinction here. Sanchez explains that when you successfully fill up with this energy, the emotional byproduct is a sensation of love. But he explicitly states this love is not a moral obligation.
This blew my mind too. We're so used to being taught that we should love others because it's the moral thing to do.
Right. But the manuscript flips that. It says this love is a spontaneous, almost hedonistic feeling of euphoria. It physically feels incredible to be connected to the divine source. It's the ultimate psychological high, but it's infinite and doesn't harm anyone.
The manuscript suggests this ecstatic connection is the true meaning behind the mystical traditions in all world religions. It is about a direct internal connection to divine energy.
But, as the story quickly reveals, getting connected is only half the battle. The protagonist gets this amazing high, feels totally connected, and then an hour later he gets stressed, and the feeling completely vanishes.
Because keeping the connection is incredibly difficult, we constantly fall back into our deeply ingrained childhood habits.
The moment we feel threatened, we default to the easiest way to get energy. We steal it from the person next to us.
And that brings us to the sixth insight, which is all about clearing the past. And to do that, we have to confront our control dramas.
This is where the book acts as a mirror. The sixth insight explains that a control drama is the specific, unconscious, manipulative strategy you developed as a vulnerable child to steal energy from your parents.
Think about it from a child's perspective. They are physically powerless and totally dependent. They desperately need attention, which is energy, from adults just to survive psychologically.
But parents are often stressed, distracted, or caught in their own dramas, meaning they aren't freely giving energy. So the child has to invent a strategy to force the adults to pay attention.
And depending on how the adults act, the child adapts and develops one of four main strategies. Let's do a deep dive into these four control dramas.
Oh, definitely. Because you will absolutely recognize yourself, your partner, and your parents in this list.
The manuscript categorizes them on a spectrum, ranging from highly aggressive to highly passive. Let's start at the most aggressive end, with the intimidator.
Which is exactly what it sounds like. This is the person who aggressively threatens others to force attention. They might use physical violence, but usually it's verbal. It's the person who constantly yells or uses an explosive temper to dominate a room.
The energetic mechanism there is fear. When someone comes at you with raw anger, you are biologically forced to pay attention to them. All of your focus rushes toward them to assess the threat.
And the intimidator absorbs that fearful energy and feels powerful. Next on the spectrum, slightly less overtly aggressive but equally draining, is the interrogator.
The interrogator doesn't yell. They pick at you. They pry into your life specifically to find faults.
They ask endless probing questions, but the questions are never born out of genuine curiosity. The goal is always to find a flaw in your logic or a weakness in your character.
We all know an interrogator. Why did you choose to wear that shirt? Why haven't you called your mother? They constantly criticize and judge.
And what happens? The moment you feel criticized, you become self-conscious. You start defending yourself, explaining your choices, and the moment you start defending yourself, you are handing your energy over on a silver platter.
Now, as we move past the midpoint to the passive side of the spectrum, we encounter the aloof drama. The aloof person realizes that fighting back against an intimidator or an interrogator is a losing battle.
So they try to protect their energy by withdrawing. They act secretive, distant, and vague. And I have to make a confession here. When I read this section, I felt incredibly exposed. I relate deeply to the aloof drama.
Oh, really?
Totally. The protagonist in the book discovers he is an aloof too. As an aloof, you play mysterious. If someone asks what's wrong, you give a one-word answer.
Yeah.
Nothing. You sigh heavily and look out the window. You refuse to communicate clearly.
And why do you do that? What is the energetic payoff for being aloof?
Because it forces the other person to dig. If I'm quiet and brooding, the other person has to lean in. They have to ask, what's wrong? Did I do something? You force them to struggle to figure you out. And through their focused attention, you are pulling a massive stream of their energy into yourself.
It is incredibly effective and highly toxic to relationships. Finally, at the absolute most passive end of the spectrum, we have the poor me.
Right. This is the person who passively plays the victim in every situation. They never take responsibility. They are constantly telling you about all the horrible, unfair things happening to them.
The strategy here is weaponized guilt. They imply that you are somehow responsible for their misery, or that if you were a good person, you would fix it for them.
They make you feel incredibly guilty if you don't drop everything to help them. You feel this draining obligation to lift them up, and you completely siphon your own energy to keep them afloat. They are emotional black holes.
What is truly fascinating about these dramas is how they systematically create each other within family units. They are passed down generationally.
Give us an example of that.
Sure, for example, an intimidator parent who is constantly threatening will almost always create a poor me child. The child is truly victimized and has no power to fight back, so their only way to survive is to appeal to pity.
Or, conversely, an interrogator parent will usually create an aloof child. The child learns very quickly that whatever they say will be used against them, so they learn to hide and withhold information to protect themselves.
It's a vicious, perfectly balanced cycle of energy theft.
But here's my question, and this is where I initially challenged the book's logic. How does simply naming these dramas actually cure them? Okay, I know I'm acting aloof, but when I'm stressed, knowing the vocabulary doesn't stop my nervous system from shutting down.
Yeah.
Naming it isn't a cure.
You are exactly right. That is a crucial point. Father Carl, another priest, explains the second half of the sixth insight. Simply identifying the drama is only the diagnostic step. To actually clear the trauma permanently, you have to look deeper. You have to discover the specific spiritual reason you were born to your particular parents.
Let's unpack this carefully because it sounds a bit esoteric. What exactly does he mean by the spiritual reason you chose your parents?
Father Carl teaches a profound reframing of childhood trauma. He suggests that every person is fundamentally a synthesis of their parents' opposing beliefs and flaws. You must look past the petty energy competition and find the evolutionary silver lining.
Right. Let's look at the protagonist. He examines his parents and realizes his mother stood for a deep inner spirituality but lacked drive. His father stood for worldly accomplishment but was spiritually empty.
They were total opposites. Their marriage was likely a constant tug of war. So Father Carl explains that the protagonist's life question, the evolutionary challenge he was born to solve, is how to combine those two fragmented truths.
His life mission is to discover a self-enhancing spirituality. How can he live an intuitively guided life while engaging in a worldly adventure?
Exactly. So once you do this deep psychological work and discover your specific life question, the paradigm shifts entirely. You realize your entire childhood, even the painful control dramas, was a necessary setup.
It was the exact friction required to define your unique purpose. And discovering this higher purpose completely frees you from the need to play the petty energy games. I don't need to steal energy by being aloof anymore because I'm plugged into a much larger mission.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, once you are clear of your past traumas and you hook up to the universe's energy through mystical appreciation, your life transitions. It becomes a conscious, guided adventure.
But that begs a highly practical question. Once you are in this state, how do you navigate that adventure day to day? How do you know where to go? And that leads us directly into the seventh insight, which is engaging the flow.
The story takes another dramatic turn here. The protagonist is briefly captured by the military, who are cracking down on the manuscript.
Right, he's thrown into a makeshift cell. But even this capture is synchronistic. In that cell, he meets a young Indian named Pablo, who teaches him the seventh insight.
The seventh insight provides the active, daily mechanics of conscious evolution. Pablo explains that engaging this flow is a specific, three-step internal process. First, you must keep your current life questions firmly at the front of your mind.
You have to know exactly what problem you're trying to figure out at that exact moment.
Second, and this requires real discipline, you must take an observer position on your own thoughts.
This is a subtle but profoundly difficult shift. Most of us just let our thoughts wash over us. But Pablo says that when a random daydream or unexplained intuition pops into your head, You cannot just let it pass.
You must stop and actively interrogate it. You must ask, why did I have this specific thought at this exact moment? How does this random image relate to the life question I'm currently holding?
Because these intuitions aren't random firings of neurons. They are the universe providing direction. And shortly after you get the intuition, the universe will provide the actual physical answer through a coincidence.
And that coincidence is almost always delivered by another person crossing your path. But there is a very strict rule about this process regarding negative thoughts.
Oh yes, this is important.
Pablo warns that fearful or negative images, like suddenly imagining yourself getting into a car crash, must be halted immediately.
You can't indulge them. You cannot let them play out in your mind.
If a fear image arises, you must consciously replace it with an image of a positive outcome. The manuscript asserts this is basic physics. If you let fear images dominate, you literally lower your personal vibration.
And because energy attracts like energy, you will actively pull those negative events into your physical reality. So we have a system where the universe delivers answers primarily through other people. The massive question then becomes, how do we interact with these people to make sure we don't miss the message?
That is the entire focus of the eighth insight, the interpersonal ethic. It establishes the new rules of engagement for human relationships. We learned in the fourth insight how not to treat people.
No manipulating or stealing energy.
The eighth insight says we must do the exact opposite. We must consciously, actively project our own energy into others.
So when you meet someone, you immediately look for their deeper beauty. You find something to genuinely appreciate about them, and you literally push your excess energy their way.
And the result is symbiotic. By uplifting them energetically, you fill them with clarity and confidence. This sudden influx of energy allows them to easily drop their own defensive control dramas.
They don't need to be intimidators or aloof because you are already feeding them.
Exactly. This allows them to relax and reveal their higher, authentic self. And from that higher self, they will naturally deliver the truth or the synchronistic message they have for you.
It's a beautifully cooperative vision of humanity. But I have to warn you, the eighth insight gets incredibly specific, and frankly, some of its applications are highly controversial. Let's talk about romantic convictions.
Ah, yes. A character named Carla explains this dynamic, and it is fascinating. She explains that when we first start connecting to the universe's energy, we naturally begin to receive what the book calls opposite sex energy directly from the universe.
We start to feel completely internally whole, balancing our own masculine and feminine traits. We feel fantastic. But then we go to a party. We meet someone of the opposite sex, the chemistry is off the charts, and we fall head over heels in love at first sight.
And the book says this is actually a disaster.
Because the moment we do that, we short-circuit our connection to the universe. We stop getting that essential energy from the infinite source, and we start taking it directly from this new, shiny person.
Carly uses a visceral analogy to describe this. She calls it the two-headed monster. In a codependent romantic addiction, the couple essentially merges to form one whole person. Imagine a giant circle, an O. One person provides the male energy, the other provides the female energy.
They feel complete together.
But because this single O is made of two distinct people, it has two heads, and therefore two egos. And both egos want to steer the single body.
Which inevitably leads to a massive, destructive power struggle. They tear each other apart, trying to control the direction of the relationship. They're terrified of a breakup because it means losing half of their energetic self.
So what is the solution? The eighth insight dictates that to avoid becoming a two-headed monster, we must initially force ourselves to have purely platonic relationships with the opposite sex.
It demands that we learn the inner truth of the opposite sex without the complication of physical, romantic projection.
We have to maintain platonic friendships until we are totally, unshakably whole on our own, drawing all our energy from the universe, not from a partner.
Only two totally whole individuals can come together to have a higher relationship where they multiply each other's energy.
Right.
Okay, that completely rewrites modern dating. But if you think that's intense, the rules for raising children are even more extreme.
Oh, they are incredibly strict.
It states you must never, ever correct a child in a way that drains their energy. That means 0, intimidating, no yelling or physical discipline. And 0, interrogating, no shaming or harsh criticism.
Furthermore, you must never lie to a child. You cannot invent untruths like the stork brought you or Santa ate the cookies just to simplify things. You must always tell them the spiritual truth at a level they can comprehend.
And then it delivers the most radical rule of all regarding family planning. The manuscript insists that adults should never take responsibility for more children than they can give 100% of their undivided attention to at any given moment.
The book strictly suggests a 1-to-1 ratio of adults to children.
I have to pause and push back hard here. I read that and thought, is this even remotely practical? A strict 1-to-1 ratio. Does that mean single mothers with 2 kids are fundamentally doomed to fail? Does it mean a family with 3 kids is inherently toxic?
It's a tough pill to swallow.
And returning to the romance rules, doesn't banning early romance and demanding platonic study just strip all the passion, the spontaneity, and the messy fun out of human dating? It all sounds impossibly utopian.
It is a totally fair critique. It is undeniably a demanding standard. But if we analyze this purely through the book's specific, energetic lens, the logic holds up.
How so?
The goal of the manuscript is not to kill passion or destroy large families. The singular goal is the absolute eradication of the human power struggle. The book argues that all human dysfunction stems from energy starvation.
Okay, I follow that.
If you have more children than you can adequately constantly energize, those children will experience an energy deficit. And to survive, they will develop control dramas. They will become intimidators or poor me's.
And if you jump into a romantic relationship before you are internally whole, you will eventually become a psychological vampire.
Right. The manuscript demands this extreme standard of establishing individual wholeness first, so that families and relationships finally become unions of complete radiant beings, rather than desperate parasites feeding on each other.
When you lay out the mechanics like that, I see the logic. It asks us to be better than we have ever been. So what happens if we actually manage to do this? What is the end game? Where does this evolutionary path actually lead us?
That ultimate question brings us to the climax of the book and the revelation of the ninth insight. The narrative tension peaks here. It's a literal, desperate race to find the ninth insight before the military and Cardinal Sebastian can destroy it.
The scenes are incredibly intense. He's sneaking through the ancient Celestine ruins, soldiers are patrolling everywhere. And as I was reading this, I kept asking myself, why is the Orthodox Church so utterly terrified of this document?
The conflict is deeply ideological. Cardinal Sebastian represents the rigid, orthodox view of the Middle Ages that Dobson described at the beginning. He genuinely believes that God is in absolute micromanaging control of the universe.
In his view, the only acceptable role for humans is to submit, obey scriptural laws, and wait to be judged.
Right. And the manuscript suggests the exact terrifying opposite. It suggests humans are the active, powerful agents of our own conscious evolution.
Sebastian fears that if everyday people believe they can access divine energy directly from a tree without a priest, it will completely undermine the church's authority. He believes it will lead to selfish individualism.
But Father Sanchez, the priest who risks his life for the manuscript, counters this beautifully. He argues that the manuscript doesn't negate the scriptures, it actually clarifies them.
He says the insights show the literal energetic mechanics of what figures like Jesus were actually doing. When Jesus performed miracles or radiated love, he was perfectly demonstrating this connection to divine energy.
Despite the violent attempts to suppress it, the ninth insight is finally revealed by his allies, Phil and Dobson, and it paints a breathtaking, utopian vision of human culture in the next millennium.
Let's break down these massive societal shifts. First, the environment and technology. The manuscript says humans will voluntarily decrease our population to a level the Earth can easily sustain. We will choose to live among ancient 500-year-old forests to draw immense energetic power from them.
And crucially, our means of survival, farming, transportation, manufacturing will be completely automated by advanced technology.
Which is the ultimate fulfillment of the modern preoccupation. We finally beat the survival game. But if we don't have to work 40 hours a week just to eat, what do we do with all that free time?
The ninth insight describes a fundamental shift to a spiritual economy. This concept totally upends capitalism. It predicts that eventually traditional currency will disappear entirely. But before that happens, we will literally start paying each other for spiritual insights.
Imagine this. You are wrestling with your life question. Someone crosses your path, you project energy into them, and they deliver a profound message that helps you evolve. In the spiritual economy, you literally give them money for that.
Tithing shifts completely. Instead of giving to a rigid institution, you directly fund the individuals who uplift your personal evolution. It's an economy based entirely on facilitating human growth.
But the ninth insight pushes far beyond sociology and economics into the realm of radical physics and theology. The protagonist meets up with Julia, another seeker, right in the heart of the ruins, and she reveals the final mind-bending secret.
We have to go back to the physics of the third insight, the idea that matter is just energy. Julia explains that as humans continually follow these insights, receiving energy and clearing their traumas, our personal vibrational frequency gets higher and higher.
And the ultimate question is, what happens to physical matter when it vibrates at incredibly high frequencies?
The ninth insight states that the entire universe is on a constant journey of evolving to higher and higher states of vibration. And eventually, human beings will vibrate at such an unimaginably high frequency that we will actually become invisible to those who are still vibrating at lower fear-based levels.
It is the literal merging of the material world and the spiritual realm. The book claims that we will consciously cross the barrier between life and the afterlife without actually dying. Our physical bodies will transmute into pure light.
We will walk directly into a heaven on earth. That is the ultimate destiny of the human race, according to the Celestine Prophecy.
What an absolute ride. It starts with a coincidence in a coffee shop and ends with the human race turning into beings of pure light. Now, it is worth briefly noting, for those who read the book, there are actually 12 insights in total in later books, but the core journey in Peru culminates with this ninth insight.
So what does this all mean for you and me right now?
I think what's most fascinating is that this book is a highly effective, profoundly practical synthesis. It takes Eastern mysticism, Western psychology, and modern quantum physics and wraps it in an accessible adventure story.
It demands that we change how we live on a daily basis. It challenges you to walk out your front door tomorrow and look at the annoying stranger on the subway, not as a nuisance, but as a potential messenger holding a piece of your puzzle. It asks you to view your exhausting arguments not as factual disagreements, but as glaring symptoms of spiritual starvation and desperate energy theft.
So who really benefits most from reading and applying this today? Honestly, if you are feeling stuck in a rut, or if you feel like your life is just a grinding series of random events, you will find massive value in adopting this worldview.
Even if you don't buy into the idea of vibrating so high that you turn invisible at the end, just applying the interpersonal ethic, just choosing to project energy into people instead of stealing it, will fundamentally change your life.
It brings a profound sense of magic, purpose, and synchronicity back to your mundane commute. You can step into the flow, plug into the infinite energy around you, and actually enjoy the grand adventure of your own evolution.
It really replaces baseline anxiety with a sense of curious anticipation.
But as we leave you today, I want you to consider one final, somewhat unsettling thought. If human evolution is driven by synchronicity, and we only reach that utopian state through shared energy, what happens to the people who flatly refuse to play along?
That's a chilling thought.
If millions of people fiercely cling to the old combative paradigm of stealing energy, do we eventually end up with a bifurcated reality? Do we split into two species, one high vibration civilization and another entirely separate society left behind to fight over the scraps?
Or does the critical mass become so powerful that it forcibly pulls even the holdouts up into the light?
It's something to chew on the next time you find yourself in an argument you just can't seem to walk away from. Thank you for joining us in the Book Nook today. If you enjoyed unpacking the mysteries of the Celestine Prophecy with us, please subscribe to the Book Nook so you never miss an episode.
And we want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us which book you'd like us to explore next. We read every single one.